So if we go back to the values, though, let's just say, vaccines pretend vaccines are safe and effective. I still don't think that people should be forced to get them. We do. I think it's obvious. Nature values. I mean, it's a overused word. Diversity. When everything is the same, things tend to go bad. So, innovation comes from trying different ideas and seeing what the results are. Enforcing any one kind of system isn't any good. So even if vaccines were great and safe and effective, that's to me not a good enough reason. There's never a good enough reason to force them on people.
Guys, what's happening? It's been a little while since we dropped an episode, but I'm excited to come at you with this new episode. It's basically an interesting topic that we dive into. This is Chris from vaxcalc.org. It's vaxcalc.org. Chris is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the data behind vaccinations. I encourage you to listen to this, share this episode far and wide. Thanks for listening. God bless.
To August of last year, nobody really knew who I was.
There's about 12 people who are producing 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation.
We need to come together as Americans and realize that we have a war at hand here. Right?
Like, dude, how scared of this shit do you have to be to be wearing gloves, a face shield, a mask at this point?
Help us to urge folks and say to them, look, it's time to roll up your sleeve and get the shot.
Chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska, responsible for 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation. Put what I say to the test. Just don't write me off as crazy misinformation.
Doctor, please bring yourself in order.
600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?
Okay, Chris, how are you, brother?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I read a little bit about your bio here, so I'm interested to dive into some of these topics and what you're all about. First of all, where are you located?
I am in Northern Virginia, Fairfax County, home of the deep state.
Yeah, right on. I see a cross on your necklace. Are you a Christian?
I am.
Yeah, rock and roll. Well, then you understand the battle that at hand here is so much bigger than what the eye can see. We are in spiritual warfare.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, really, for the first time, though, in my life, I feel like we have the wind, in our sails.
Yeah,
and we're turning ship and heading in the right direction.
Yes.
I mean, thank God for the way the election worked out.
Yeah, right. And I always say that the soil for truth is rich, and so that's I feel like the people are starving for it. And the one thing that crony baloney did was actually shine the light on this whole narrative, and they overplayed their hand and gave us really that opportunity for people to wake up. And so many people are red pilled. So the business that you're in, tell me, how do you, is it VaxCal?
VaxCalc, sort of like
VaxCalc,
it's short for it used to be a volunteer project for NVIC that I started back in 2009, and it was called the Vaccine Ingredients Calculator. And I just saw so much more potential for it. And I wanted it to be more than just something like a spare time thing. And so we had a friendly parting of ways in 2018. And then in November 2023, I figured out a way to go full time on building this. And the idea is to turn it into a business, something that would ideally last beyond my lifetime and serve the people who are called in the growing ranks of parents who are referred to as vaccine hesitant, but to actually celebrate it as, a sign of wisdom and discernment. Because if you think about it, anything that has risk, I mean, you should be hesitant.
Choice. Yeah, you have choice.
It's like common sense.
Right. Well, common sense is not so common. And
True.
Where there's risk, there should be choice. So
absolutely,
we are like brothers from other mothers here. I mean, it looks like I'm kind of just scoping your bio out and looking at the pictures in the fight that you've been in. You got three kids?
Yes.
Okay, so your dad, that's your why, right? I mean,
without a doubt. And it's like dad, and I know future granddad, right? Because the kids my daughter's 21 and my sons are 19 and 17.
Okay.
And I fought like hell to keep them safe as I was learning more and more. And now, I know I'm not going to live forever, duh, right? But when you're in your 20s and maybe even a little bit early 30s, you think you're going to, or you kind of feel like it, but you like, I want to leave things in a better shape for them, so that like I'm drawing my last breath, and I want to feel like I did my job, and that they are in a better place than maybe like 10 years ago.
Right. Well, that's our, I feel like our heart, right, for our children, and really to protect our children's children, because we
Yes.
know the battle at hand here, and there's so much deception in the world today. There's so many people that are blind, and my heart's for those people to wake up, and it's really, really challenging. I can't help but think of the quote by Mark Twain. He said, it's not what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you believe to be true that just ain't so.
Yes.
And how many people are believing that lie and so deceived? So your organization that focuses on ingredients, vaccine ingredients. So tell me about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, it does really more than that. It started off focusing on ingredients, but it's really now the vision is to be a full research platform. And so here's an example of that. Yeah, we can definitely be like the Consumer Reports for vaccines, because where parents can compare brands and make demands of their doctors. So it's not meant to promote vaccination, nor do we try to change minds. Although I will say that no one should get that COVID shot, especially kids. But the idea is to try to change the way people think, the way they vaccinate, to come in like an empowered consumer, saying, yeah, I want that, or maybe I'm not sure if I want that. No, I definitely don't want that. It's like to break apart the idea of a vaccination schedule and to treat it more like the way you would when you're going into, say, Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or wherever you get your groceries. The parents that, and there's a growing number of them, that look for something like VaxCalc, they're the ones that go in and they look at the ingredients on the food labels. And they're very concerned about those ingredients. They care about what's going into their bodies and to what's going into their children's bodies. And we need to do the same thing with anything that anybody is proposing to go into the body.
So tell me, are you for any vaccine?
Am I for?
Yes.
No, I am for parent sovereignty. Okay, parents have this, the way I describe it is, like me as a dad, I have a sacred duty to protect my children from before birth, and as long as I can. And so that sacred duty means that me and my wife, we are the decision makers. The doctor is a consultant, a public health expert. They have an opinion and they can share that opinion. I prefer to see them go into the public realm and debate people who have different opinions. But am I for any particular vaccine? I don't really see it as like for or against. The freedom and parental sovereignty is the ultimate value.
I would agree. And
Yeah.
and really to dive into that, I mean, I don't believe there is a safe vaccine on the market. And so I think that it's, every vaccine has a risk. And there are adverse reactions, and the magnitude of injuries that are happening that are going on underneath the radar, and is astronomical. I mean, we have paid billions and billions of dollars through the vaccine court systems, as you know, and a very small percentage even gets reported. And so I want to know how you got into this fight, and
Sure.
and I like to dive to just kind of circle back around. Oh, I hate that word, circle back. That reminds me of
No, it's all right.
Jen Psaki here, but it's like, I think that we will return back to this conversation. We'll do a 360 here. There's a better way to say it.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
so how did you get in this fight, and what brought you into this?
Sure. Well, okay. So let's go before my daughter was born. While she was being developed inside my wife, I was a typical arrogant software developer, techie kind of guy, reading The Economist. I didn't really think much about vaccines, but if you would have asked me back then, I'd probably be like, yeah, safe and effective. Yeah, trust your doctor. Yeah. Now, I was fortunate in that my wife did healthcare public relations in a previous life, okay, including for some of the big pharmaceutical companies when she was living in Manhattan. And she grew disgusted with it because the way she explained it to me, like a new study would come out, and you probably know all about this. A new study would come out, and they have experts coming in to tell the PR people, okay, this is what the study says. This is how we read it. Then they would say, but this is how we want to read it. This is what we want the study to say, and they're not the same things. And they have a list of doctors that the PR people call who will say that the study actually says what they want it to say, because doctors are permitted legally to do that. And she became very distrustful, obviously, of what was coming out of the pharmaceutical companies. So, she kind of raised the alarm about that. And then when we went around, I still wasn't exactly on the same level, but we went around to interview pediatricians to find a good fit. And the thing that really surprised me was that I think it was like 5 or 6 pediatricians. And when vaccines came up, they brought up the hepatitis B shot. And I was like, what? I mean, that really was surprising to me. I was like, why would you want to give a hepatitis B vaccine to an infant when, there's no risk there? I mean, isn't this like I'm using dirty needles, I'm sleeping with prostitutes kind of issue? And, they couldn't answer that question. What they would do was every one of them said a very similar thing. Well, what if she gets bit in daycare by a child that has hepatitis B? I was like, well, she's not going into daycare. All right, so give me something else. What if she needs a blood transfusion? It's like, oh, Cal, come on now. I mean, what if the stars are falling from the sky? I mean, you're really reaching with this one. And so, I think because I was in software, and one thing you do in software development is that you look at the software that that your team members are writing. And so you understand the system you're working on, and you critique the software produced by other people before it goes into the system. So I was used to looking at, okay, what is this one smaller piece doing? How is it designed? What is its purpose? And what does it serve in the larger picture? And I was doing that kind of questioning with the doctors, and they failed utterly. So I went from just assuming they were trustworthy to oh my God, we have a problem here. They're trying to put something in my daughter that makes no sense. And so that's when I started digging, and I remember I went through a period of like 6 to 8 months of what I would call moral vertigo, which means like everything I had assumed to be true was being turned upside down and inside out. It's like I felt like, okay, this profession that I thought I could trust with the health of my child, they're doing something that I don't even know if they understand it. Or they're lying to me, or someone is lying to them, and they're just repeating it to me. So I had this sense that, my God, they're trying to use my daughter, and I need to protect. I need to understand what's going on, understand the big picture, understand why they're not telling me the truth. And so I just started digging like crazy, and honestly, I haven't stopped.
Right. So that ignited, that was the catalyst for you to keep and understanding this is almost your purpose. Why Esther 4:14, you were made for such a time as this. And I feel
interesting.
like,
yes.
And I feel like that same call, because you saw deception, you saw that they're hiding something, the truth, and you see that on a massive scale. As soon as you get red pilled in this fight, as soon as you start seeing that, wow, I'm being lied to, I'm not, it creates this yearning for the truth.
Yeah.
In this, it really does. And so many other people are like that. Once they, get past that whole denial stage that our government maybe is not telling the truth, and
that's right.
And the white,
I was just going to say, it's like a million times even more. It's a million times more intense than like you're just lying to me. It's like you are lying to me about something that you want to do with my daughter, with my new child, with my when the sons are born, and I mean that just that's just so different than something that would just impact me. And then you start to realize, my God, they're doing this with everyone's children.
Yes, and exactly right. And that's the thing. It is a global agenda. And really, I want to defend some of the pediatricians and some of the doctors here. A lot of them truly believe what they're doing is a good thing. A lot of them believe that what they're doing is best for the child. But again, a lot of their continuing education is funded by big pharma. And so they've been so indoctrinated in this broken system that they truly believe they have a flawed view of of these vaccines, and really, so people like you and myself are exposing a lot of that. So
Right.
so you didn't vaccinate, you did or did not vaccinate, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh no, I don't mind. I don't mind at all. No, it's like a process or a journey when
Yeah.
when you are red pilled. So my daughter got probably 80% of the childhood vaccines up until age 5.
Okay.
All right, definitely not Hep B, not Hep A, and there were a few, I think a few others. Probably not. I don't think the chickenpox vaccine either. But I had 3 children, and each one, okay, 3 children, 2003, 2005, 2007. Each one got less, or got fewer vaccines. And interestingly, my daughter, who is the most vaccinated, has the most issues. She has a potentially fatal peanut allergy. The other 2, who got fewer vaccines, don't have anything like that.
So in 20, what was that? So that was 21. You said your daughter's 21.
Yeah.
So that was in 2004. Is my math correct?
Yeah, November 2003. Yeah.
2003. So, I mean, the amount of vaccines that have hit the market since 2003, it's growing.
It's
Right.
a lot more.
Yeah, it's a lot. So, I mean, I encourage people listening, look at the amount of vaccines that hit the market since then, since 2003. I mean, since the 1986 Compensation Act. I mean, we had, 6 vaccines prior to that act? And then now we have how many on the schedule? There's going to be, if you follow
there's like 17 different diseases and unbelievable amount of shots, even in just the first 12 months.
Well, if you follow the vaccine schedule and then the recommended double dose of COVID and flu every year,
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have over, I think, 100 something vaccines by the time you're 30 years old.
No, it's true. It's actually, I look at it, I think it's either insane or really bizarre. One of the things for people who are really in my life who are really pro-vaccine, and and they'll ask me, well, why are you doing this, and blah blah blah. One of the things I'll ask them is like, well, what do you know in the world where it's a one size fits all system and it works really well and it isn't harming people? Can you name one? One size fits all education doesn't work well. We don't go for one size fits all diets or clothes or shoes or anything. And not only that, but I'll encourage parents also. Just look around the world. Let's look at Denmark. Vaccine schedules are radically different. They give maybe 1/3 the amount of vaccines that we do here, and they don't start until 3 months.
Exactly.
So
Right.
how is it that it's science-backed? It can't be that different if it's scientific. That's another modern country.
Right. Well, going back, I'm not going to use the word circle back, but we're talking about going back to kind of the initial stages of what you were doing, the infant stages of your industry, you were kind of exposing the vaccine ingredients. We have, I like to talk about that because a lot of people, majority of the people that are pro-vaccine, you ask them, tell me 3 ingredients. They couldn't tell you a single ingredient in these vaccines. We have cultures and hamster cultures. We have Medine Darby kidney cells from a canine Cocker Spaniel. We have monkey cell lines. We have, abortal fetal cells like WI38, which I'm sure you are fully aware of.
Yeah.
In the Stanley Plotkin's deposition, talking about how many aborted babies that they use for these vaccine ingredients. So tell me, shine some light on that, will you?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most important or most urgent to understand combinations that parents need to know about is aluminum with pertussis toxin. So there's a few different chemical names for pertussis toxin. And that's, just to get a little background, that's in DTaP or Tdap, right? Pertussis is whooping cough for anyone listening. There's a different chemical name for pertussis toxin, which is it's called histamine sensitizing factor. Now, let's think about that for a minute. When you have allergies, what does the doctor give you? He gives you an antihistamine. So pertussis toxin is also called histamine sensitizing factor. It makes your body more reactive, more sensitive to histamine that's being produced. And in there's the Nature journal from, I forget how long ago this article was, but we have it in VaxCalc. When scientists are studying food allergies, they'll induce food allergies in lab mice by injecting them with a combination of aluminum and pertussis toxin, or histamine sensitizing factor. So that, we can, and for decades have induced food allergies by using the same two ingredients that are in DTaP and TDAP.
So tell me, going back to that, so the histamine response, I want to touch on that because, I study, a lot of my work is in immunology.
Oh, wow.
And so I look at a lot of these, vaccines even inducing a histamine response.
Yeah.
And it's comical because a lot of the three-letter mafias will tell you that it's normal for a little bit of inflammation at the injection site. And we get, and so, and my work is the physiological responses from these vaccines and what they're doing. We get an immunoglobulin E response, which is inflammation, which is going to release histamine on a small level. I mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the histamine response on the blood-brain barrier and how those ingredients can affect the nervous system. But I mean, the histamine responses, I mean, how, in your opinion, are you familiar with how many histamine responses that are correlated to the adverse reactions in these vaccines, and how much of a role does the histamine play in that?
Yeah, I think you're going to understand that much more than me. I don't have that kind of deep knowledge on that realm, but I do know that, I mean, everything we do to keep people healthy is to reduce inflammation.
Right.
I mean, I do a daily ice bath, and it's like, it's a wonderful thing to reduce inflammation. Mm-hmm. And we also know, and have known for a really long time, that inflammation in pregnant women presents a really big risk to her unborn child, and yet they want to vaccinate pregnant women. Exactly right. Yeah, I mean, it's when you look at what the public health people are saying, it's almost beyond belief that they can just sit there and not ask questions about their own advice. Right. Because most people have common sense, and it just doesn't make sense.
Right. Going back to common sense, it's not so common.
Right.
I mean, so yeah, I mean, why? So vaccinating pregnant moms, they call it in utero, as you know. Yeah. Just for the listeners, they call it in utero vaccinations, and we have, I remember having my firstborn baby, and we went to the med center here, which is like it's a college, and they have like a lot of residents, and I had no idea. I'm like, what are we getting ourselves into in these residents there? And I got into a huge debate with these so-called residents there that were pushing the flu vaccine on my wife. And I'm like, why does she need a flu shot? She's in labor, right? And it was bad.
They wanted to give it to her while she was in labor?
Yes. When she was having contractions, they wanted to give her a flu shot. And I was like, I feel like I'm being punked right now, and the lady was so mad. She legit left the room, and we never saw her again. I was like, good riddance, lady. See ya. And now that's why we do we did a home birth.
Yeah, we used a birthing center for all three. Yeah. I mean, in part to avoid that, but largely just to control the environment.
Yes, which I recommend doing a home birth.
Yeah. So, that's, if we could just like stay on that for a second, a lot of the parents I talk to, they don't, I mean, it's unfortunate, they don't plan ahead or start planning until it's almost a little too late. Before you start a family, ideally, they'd be educating themselves on these issues, because, if you put yourself into the hands of the medical system without doing anything to prepare to control your own fate and how your birth is going to go, I mean, it's going to be highly medicalized, and they're going to expect you to follow their protocols. And in fact, when they go in to the hospital, they're going to agree to it.
Yep, exactly right. And you're seeing this, the business of being born. I mean, you have these babies that these moms, they're taking this element away. I mean, you went to a birthing center, so you have that element. There's such a spiritual component to birth. It's like you're welcoming this miracle of life into your family. God is blessing you. The fruit of the labor is a gift from the Lord. It is that. I mean, that's scripture. And so, understanding that and just welcoming the Lord into that whole time is such a wonderful experience, and I'm saying that because we had 4 babies in the hospital, and then we had 1 home birth. So we have 5 kiddos, so pray for me. So, yeah. So it's like, the element of the spiritual component to that is such a wonderful thing. And it's life without fear. Really, that's what it's about. When you're in that hospital setting, they are quick to remind you of all the things that could go wrong. right? And that's why we have, and they're so fearful. There's this anxiety stigma around the pregnancy, not only just from the vaccine side of things, but just from the,
it's also fear-based. I mean, I stopped doing annual physicals back in 2008. Because it's like it's like as you get a little older, they want to run more tests and they are worried about these numbers and that numbers. And they're telling me, oh, this doesn't look good. I'm like, yeah, but I feel great. What the hell are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah, it's like when you go into there and you allow people to put all this fear into you, eventually it's going to influence what you permit to happen or the path you go down.
Exactly right, brother. And that's the thing. Fear sells. They use it in marketing. They use it in the history of vaccinations. Even Paul Offit of Vaccine Tyrant has said, "Oh, vaccine sells. Fear sells. Fear sells. We need to push that on the new parents here and the vulnerable parents, which that's called coercion, which is something that should be illegal in the medical setting. But it is nice and comforting to have these conversations, and we need to welcome this. And here in the state of Nebraska, we got a bill. I mean, they're trying to come after home births in the state of Nebraska and actually across the nation. Because why? Because most people that use home births, that's lost profits for them. They are also, when you go into the hospital and have a birth in the hospital, as soon as you have medical intervention, there's been studies upon studies that show that it increases the medical intervention, right? So as a data guy like yourself and a tech guy, I mean, I'm sure you've seen all the charts in the medical and the vaccine realms and the vaccine versus unvaccinated studies and showing that. So the data. So let's speak on the data here. That you're a data guy and you're an informational guy in that regard. So in your line of work, shine some light on this. Just in what you have seen when it comes to the data.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much of it. Is there a place you'd like to begin?
I've seen just there's in your line of work, I've seen, just the autism link, that's another topic in the data, because that's something that I'm talking about. There's no data here. There's, we talk about the studies and the data and the clinical data. We know that the studies have been compromised. I mean, William Thompson,
without a doubt. That's actually, for the bigger picture, one of the things that I'm working on, and there's a lot of suspicion of AI, and I think that suspicion is important and justified, but there's a lot that we can do with it. So I'm actually building our own, I call it VaxBot, and we put good quality studies into it. I put my educational emails into it. You build kind of guardrails around it so that parents can use it to have supportive conversations. And like one thing the AI can be really good at is like rapidly finding things from your own knowledge base, not a knowledge base owned by Microsoft or OpenAI or whatever, right? But you can build your own knowledge base, point your AI at that, and then it's almost like, when you have all these studies, and then you can converse with the studies in lay people language, which is really super powerful. And that's something I'm really interested in right now as a way to democratize the data.
So here's a thought.
Yeah.
Paul Thomas, how he submitted his clinical data.
Yeah.
And showed that the unvaccinated were healthier, they were sick less often. Same with Dr. Noonan from Pennsylvania, who treated a lot of the Amish. I wonder if we can go in and actually create, get codes, because it's got, they have ICD-10 codes, and keep it anonymous for the most part. Obviously, there's HIPAA violations here, but maybe find willing patients and data collection centers that we can have this ICD-10 codes and put it in your VaxBot and say, look, from the ICD-10 codes, these kids had vaccines, and then you can look at the diagnostic codes and say, look at this, and then have the unvaccinated and say, look, they don't have these conditions.
Yeah.
Just like, you know what I mean? So there's got to be an opportunity for a guy like you to collect that data somehow, and then
sure, that would be great. I mean, we need a lot of people. Yeah, absolutely. And even though, if we go back to the values, though, let's just say vaccines are safe and effective. I still don't think that people should be forced to get them. We do. I think it's obvious. Nature values. It's an overused word. Diversity. When everything is the same, things tend to go bad. So, innovation comes from trying different ideas and seeing what the results are. Enforcing any one kind of system isn't any good. So even if vaccines were great and safe and effective, that's to me not a good enough there's never a good enough reason to force them on people.
100%. And that's, bodily autonomy is
Yes.
important. And, I believe the body is a temple. And when we mix contaminants like monkey serum and whatever the hell we put in these dumb things, it's going to contaminate our body. It's, that's why we have religious exemptions. That's why, a lot of people, they had vaccine watchmen 100 years ago because they didn't want to believe in these blood poisoning concoctions.
Right.
But, I think there is an element to that. And you're right. If you want to go get the vaccine, go get it. And if you want to be informed, then get informed. But really,
I mean, there's just even fundamental logic missing
Yes.
from the vaccine space, right?
Yes.
Like if they're effective, it shouldn't really matter who doesn't get them.
Exactly right.
So in a way, it's like I like to tease the proponents of that. Sort of like, well, I've been working out and I'm just not getting the results I want because you're not going to the gym either. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. It's a flaw. So, you're referring to herd immunity, which is herd mentality. But
Yes.
a lot of these politicians, which is scary, I've gotten debates with these guys and they're like, I believe in freedom. When it comes to mandating vaccines, they're like, I believe in freedom, except I don't believe you have the freedom to get me sick. And I'm like, whoa, let's slow down here. Right. These politicians,
They're
they
not
have
living in reality. I mean,
right, they're not living in reality.
They're not living in reality. We live in a world where, people do get sick and people die.
Yes.
And that's really unfortunate, but like, you're not, we can't, you can't really be a mentally healthy person until you accept what's so.
Right. Exactly right. So, and that's one thing I agree on. We need to fight for, but really it's a lack of.
Not only that, but like when you hear someone say that kind of thing, it's like, yeah, but for centuries, when there is some kind of outbreak, smart societies know how to quarantine people, right? If there's something really horrible, you know how to separate people off. You know how to protect the vulnerable. The idea that you have to give shots to everyone is just not accurate.
Right. And going back to that, I am in healthcare and I see sick people all the time. I don't wear a mask. I'm not fearful.
No, not at all.
And I hardly ever get sick. And so it raises a lot of questions with the roots of virology and really what we're told about viruses and everything else. And I think that there's a lot of flaws in that. So what are your views on that with, because a lot of people, there's a lot of mixed, thoughts on that. And, I don't know if you looked in the PCR testing and the diagnostic test for COVID, but what are your thoughts on, the people that say viruses don't exist?
Well, I think that's a little bit of a distraction in a way. Like I don't typically address whether like virus. I don't want to spend any time, me personally. I don't mean here on the conversation. I mean me personally, trying to dig into whether they exist or not. I just want to be effective in the real world. And so an example of that would be, since you brought up masks and COVID and everything, I really like how the Amish handled
Amen.
the COVID issue, man. It's like they see, okay, there's something happening. They didn't spend time like, okay, was it from a lab or is it natural? Is it a bat or whatever? They're like, we're going to go and we're going to handle it. And they go in public, they go into their church or wherever. And they want to keep living their lives, and they accept that someone is going to people are going to get sick, and some may die, right? But but everyone else is strengthened from it.
Right. That's exactly
and
right.
And that was their choice, and to me, it's like really wise because they choose not to live in fear. It's like they went and they immediately confronted the threat.
Yes.
And that's like, to me, that's like simple, basic, beautiful courage.
Right.
Rather than like running away, hiding from my mask. Oh, Dr. Fauci, that kind of thing. It's so
life
much.
Without fear. Right.
Thank you. Life without fear.
Yep. One of my great mentors always said that fear is the fire that fuels the furnace of disease. And I saw a funny meme of the Amish. And one guy had a mask on. He wasn't Amish. There was like a normal guy from the city. He had a mask on. He had gloves, and he was terrified. And he had his vaccine patches. And he was next to an Amish guy that had no mask. And he's sitting there. And the guy asked the Amish guy, he's like, "Aren't you terrified? We're in a pandemic." And the Amish guy goes, "Sorry, I don't have a TV."
Oh my God! That's so true because we get about half of our food from an Amish farm. And I love the way they live. I don't really want to drive around, in buggies and dress that way. but I got a ton of respect from them. And I much prefer that they produce our food than like the stuff you might buy from a typical grocery store.
Right. So, I'm tempted to shave my stash and join the Amish community, and just, I'm halfway there, just,
No, you really are.
Yeah.
You really are.
I mean, they got a lot of things going right. They got some weird,
Absolutely.
They got some weird theology, I think, but I think they got a lot of things right.
Yeah, I mean, no one's perfect, right? Let's pick and choose.
Right. Yeah, but they got a lot of things right. And I go trout fishing in Wisconsin every year, and they live simple lives. And my boys, I take them up there, and it was like a clash of two worlds. We're driving down to the trout stream, and we crossed a buggy, and literally we were fishing this trout stream, and then we were on the road, and they were going down to the trout river, and two boys, and they had fishing poles in their buggy, and we crossed paths, and it was like so funny because we did a slow-mo. We looked at each other and we waved, and they waved at us, and my boys were like, "Dad," it was just like going back in time. And,
isn't that's so cool?
Yeah,
The way I feel really fortunate to be getting their food. Before I knew anything about the Amish farm, I went for 20 years being massively lactose intolerant, couldn't drink milk at all. I had to take those little Lactaid pills before eating anything. Like if I want a nice piece of pizza, I've got to pull out those Lactaid. And then I had a friend, actually a couple of them, that kept bugging me to try some raw milk. I had never heard of it before. And when they first said it, I was like, that sounds really disgusting. Why the hell would I want to drink raw milk? Ew, right? But they literally bugged me for like half a year, to the point where I got so sick of it. I was like, okay, all right, bring me some. I'll take it home, because I have to take it home because I'm going to get feel really gross, and I'll try it. And the amazing thing was that I got a half gallon, and I drank a cup, and I kept waiting for that need to run into the bathroom, and it never came.
Yeah.
But get this, the next morning I woke up with this intense craving for that milk, because it has all the cream in it. It was really rich. And then I did another experiment. My wife was making this delicious lasagna that I love, and it's all cheesy and sausage and everything. And I always had to take a ton of Lactaid before eating it. I was like, okay, so I drank a cup of the milk, and then I had the lasagna. No problem. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Right. I mean, it's a live food. We, the whole route of pasteurization. It's crazy to think that, we take it and we're, that's going back to the bacteria in the world of bacteria, the microscopic world. We have such a fear around bacteria. Yes. Bacteria can cause problems, yes, but really it's not the cause of all disease.
No.
And I've heard statements like we have 10 times the amount of bacteria, than we, on and in the body than we do cells. And it's a symbiotic relationship. So, when we take that milk and pasteurize it, we just kill it, really. It's a dead food.
That's true. I mean, I got to the point where, I had read so much about raw milk versus pasteurized. I see pasteurized milk, and this is going to sound gross. All I think of is, okay, that's like dead protein and a little bit of blood and pus.
Right. I mean, it's right. I mean, I don't consume pasteurized milk as well. I mean, we buy raw dairy. But it's good, it's so healthy for the body. But
no, it's true. And I mean, there's another thing that would be fun to talk about. One of the things I found as I was getting older was, and I didn't realize it at the time, right? But my comfort zone was shrinking. Like instead of going out into the cold and having a lot of fun in it, or the extreme heat and sweating, I was more and more and more, as you get older, you start to avoid both the extremes. And I didn't realize the degree to which that was radiating throughout my entire life and just shrinking my comfort zone. And then I found, you ever hear of that Wim Hof?
Yes.
Yes. So I've been doing the Wim Hof method now, the deep breathing and the ice baths, for 2 years. And my gosh, it's made such a difference. Literally within the first week of doing it, I felt like I had more energy than I did in 20 years.
Right. Okay.
And now I go to the gym and I'm lifting weights more than literally I did 20 years ago. It's unbelievable. Yep. And it's like I go out in the cold and in the heat more than like anyone else I know. I love it.
Yeah, it's good.
I think there's something about modern living. Like on one hand, I'm so grateful for so many of the conveniences. But if we're not careful, it's easy to get so comfortable that it becomes like a form of slavery.
100%.
Where you're just a little too scared of things, right? Because if you're so dependent upon everything that's modern, when someone can threaten to take that away from you, as we saw during lockdown,
Right.
Like take away your job, or take away this, or take away that.
Right. We fear adversity, but that's how we grow stronger.
Yes.
And the body is the same way. When we put the body through stresses, it's like we grow stronger. And good stresses, there are bad stresses, absolutely, but like you said, the ice bath. I mean, you're putting a body through such a crazy scenario of ice water, like Wim Hof. It's so abnormal that the body almost goes in shock. But if you can control your breathing and get through that, you're going to go stronger.
And I mean, it also teaches you to pay, just really focus on, how am I feeling? Am I getting to that point where I need to get out, right? So you learn where your edge is and how to go safely over it, but without going too far. Right? So you're like, and this comes to a point that's super important for all parents, whether you do ice bath or not. But so the Wim Hof method is phenomenal at helping you become comfortable within discomfort. And as parents, we need to be comfortable making other people uncomfortable in order to protect our children. Kind of like what you did in the hospital, telling the person pushing that flu shot to get the hell away.
Yeah. Right. And that's the key. But most people want comfort. They want to,
Yes.
I mean, our only comfort, I believe, is in Jesus. But, when we have, how do you say it? That it can lead to problems, and taking the easy path or the path of least resistance. I mean, there's a saying out there, taking the path of least resistance is what makes men and rivers crooked. But we need to go through adversity, go through things, and absolutely, we're going to have hardships, expect them. So when we do things like that are hard and challenging for us, they grow stronger, just like in Romans 5, when it says, when we go through tribulation to perseverance, character, hope, right?
Yes.
So these things, we can't fear tribulation.
I think, we're designed to grow stronger.
Yes. Amen.
It's really important that we find ways to do that.
Yes. Amen, brother. So that's the thing. That's the challenge that we have, to grow stronger and put that through, inspect hardships. But yes, there's hope to be found there. So I'm going to give you the last word here. I can't believe it's already been, 40 minutes here, but I want to give you the last segment.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Just a final word of encouragement for the listeners here and where people can find you.
Sure. So if you go to vaxcalc.org, it's VAXCALC.org. I mean, the best thing to do is, and you can't miss it. On the website in the upper right-hand side, there's a big pink button to join our email list. And you can sniff us out that way, see if we're a fit. And even if you never sign up for the service itself, I put out an email practically every day of various things related to vaccines and other methods of health. And sometimes it gets real personal. It's pretty interesting. That would be the best way to stay connected. And if anyone, when people respond to the emails that go out, I do see every response, and I'm able to answer most of them.
Awesome.
And I welcome inquiries. I really like going back and forth with folks. So in terms of last words, I think the most important thing is to see your parenting as your sacred duty. And when someone, if someone's applying the term vaccine hesitant to you, I mean, you should be proud of that. That means you're thinking, it means you have wisdom, it means you're practicing discernment, and that's part of your sacred duty to protect your children. And, I've been contacted by, a lot of parents over the years, and sometimes they feel guilty because when they were young and, more naive, less educated, they were actually kind of like me and, came closer to fully vaccinating, and then later on they regret it. But, the thing is, it's sort of like life itself. Your personal health, and your children's health, it's a journey. It takes time to develop wisdom and knowledge, and it's sometimes it's really difficult to see and to accept that the people you really believe that you could trust, you actually can't. And so I'll close with the number one test for trust. Okay, the number one test for trust is to ask yourself, who has skin in the game? And by skin in the game, that means like when they give you advice and you take their advice. So for example, you take the advice to vaccinate, your doctor gets a benefit from that. Okay? But when you take their advice and things go wrong, the person giving the advice, if they have skin in the game, they pay a penalty for that bad advice. So when you see that someone has no skin in the game, they don't pay a penalty for what they're telling you you should do, you really shouldn't trust them. You have to be very careful.
Well said, Chris. Well, I greatly appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge and wisdom. I feel like we could talk for hours.
Yes.
And so I just want to be respectful of your time today. And I really, really value what you have to say, and I really appreciate it. And so God bless you, friend.
God bless you too, man. Thank you for having me.
Yes,
it's a real honor, a real honor.
I will have links here, and keep up the fight. I want to encourage you. This is so much bigger than on the surface, as you know. This is spiritual warfare that we're in, psychological warfare, and so we need to keep pushing forward and running that race. Chris, God bless you, friend.
God bless you
again. Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
To August of last year, nobody really knew who I was.
There's about 12 people who are producing 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation.
We need to come together as Americans and realize that we have a war at hand here. Right?
Like, dude, how scared of this shit do you have to be to be wearing gloves, a face shield, and mask at this point?
Help us to urge folks and say to them, look, it's time to roll up your sleeve and get the shot.
Chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska, responsible for 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation. Put what I say to the test. Just don't write me off as crazy misinformation.
Doctor, please bring yourself in order.
600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?